This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
Hey, what's happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. I have a gentleman on today. He is going to inspire you to do a lot of cool things. I had a chance to be on his show, and he is awesome. Allan Draper is a serial entrepreneur, investor, business growth expert, attorney, and host of two successful podcasts, the Business Growth Pod and Bux Podcast. He specializes in scaling businesses and helping entrepreneurs transform an idea into a thriving business. Through a dedicated approach to business analysis, Draper has contributed to the growth and development of startups in a variety of industries, transforming them into multi-million-dollar enterprises. Allan, my brother, you have been busy. How you doing, man?
Good. I appreciate you having me on, JM. We just recorded recently, you and I on my podcast, is the Business Growth Pod, and I'm just excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, man, because again, that bio, you're not that old, man, to have accomplished as much as you have done. Business growth expert, serial entrepreneur, investor, attorney. I didn't know that. I honestly, when we did it, tell me your journey into becoming all of these things. And I know you're passionate about business and growing and startups. Tell me your journey into that, brother.
Yeah. So, when I was a little kid, I grew up in a small farming community on the Oregon-Idaho border. I grew up in Oregon, but it's a lot more like Idaho than, it's not rainy. It's not green. It's not liberal politically. It's, high desert, very relatively poor community. I would watch, the lawyer shows, and I'd see how, the glitz and the glam of attorneys, how they present them on TV. And so I always wanted to be an attorney when I was really little. And then I got to the point where, I started reading business books and books about money and realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I've kind of combined them to some extent. I graduated from law school and I practiced commercial litigation. So basically, I represented companies that, had to sue another company. So I did that for a few years, and then, started my first business. I've been investing in real estate for 15 or 16 years. But then, when I was practicing law, I decided to take the leap. And, I think the people that had the hardest time understanding, it wasn't really my family, it wasn't my wife. When I told her, hey, I'm going to quit my well-paying legal job in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to move to Detroit, Michigan and start a bug company. It wasn't her so much that had a hard time with it. It was my law school classmates, because they knew what I had gone through studying for the bar, trying to climb the proverbial corporate ladder in the legal world. And anyway, that's kind of what was my springboard. And ever since then, I've just surrounded myself with really good people that have helped me scale different businesses in different industries.
Well, and I can't wait to get to that, but I have to ask, I want to go back and get into your mindset at that time, because anybody that has done law school, taken the LSATs, gone through the entire thing, did the bar, that's not a simple task. And yet here we are. I understand people saying, wow, there's some fears and trepidation. Why would you ever leave? And a bug company in Detroit, this doesn't make sense. But tell me your mindset at that moment. I really want to dig into that.
Yeah. What's interesting is a lot of times our opportunities, they pigeonhole us. People think that when they get a degree, they're opening doors. And that is really dependent on how they view the degree, right? For 98% of my law school class, they're never going to do anything else, no matter what comes along. And for some of them, that might be the best thing, right? But for me, it wasn't. And so I kind of came to this realization where I had to make a decision about, hey, this is a better opportunity for me and my family. It's outside of the legal world. So am I going to use my legal education and my and my law license as a crutch, or am I going to use it as a springboard? Right. And you know what's funny, JM, is that most people use it as a crutch. You know what? Nah, I'm going to pass. I have a well-paying job. Like, I'm successful, whatever. And that's the thing, is that, that's just an example of how sometimes good is the greatest enemy of great, right? Good is the enemy of great. And I'm so thankful that I took that leap of faith. And at the end of the day, I have a crazy good safety net, right? If I lose everything else, I still have an active law license in Arizona. So,
well, and I will tell you, as an entrepreneur, I mean, my goodness, having that contract law background, being able to read these agreements, knowing how litigation works. I mean, I just look at it as such an advantage. I mean, if I could rewind, I think I would have done law school, knowing what I know now, to say, wow, to have that feather in your cap and say, I don't have to rely solely on a general counsel or retain somebody. I have this knowledge. I look at that as that is such an advantage for you. Do you agree? Is that something you utilize quite often?
Yeah. So, I use a lot of the logical processes that attorneys use. I do deal with contracts sometimes. It's easier for me to understand and digest information because of law school. I don't do a lot of real legal work anymore. I'm considered the general counsel for all of our companies, most of our companies, but anything specific we'll send out to somebody else. But it does help just kind of having that understanding. Where it hurts, though, is with this, Jam. Attorneys, especially litigators. So I was only involved in businesses that something was going wrong with, right? So I was only involved when partners were fighting, when one company didn't pay another, something like that. That's when I got involved. I wasn't involved when it was rainbows and sunshine and everyone was making money. What happens is that jades attorneys, litigators, to where we're like, all we see, case after case after case, business after business after business, is failing in some way, is having some issues. And so a lot of attorneys are like, I'm never going into business. I'm going to be an employee my entire life because this is all that happens. Right. I think it's like this in a lot of industries. It's like this with doctors. Doctors, very bright, very intelligent people, but they're only helping the sick. So after a while, it's like, geez, everybody's sick, when it's just not the case. And so, so they say that attorneys don't make the best business people. And I think that's one of the reasons why. In order to be successful in business, you have to be crazy optimistic. I always tell people that if I knew what I know now about how difficult business is, I may have not started my first one. Sometimes, maybe a lot of times, when you're getting started, it's a benefit to be a little naive. It really is, because then you put yourself out there and you just figure it out.
Well, so you did choose this path, man, and so I guess naivety is bliss that you did, because clearly you've taken these companies and you've developed these enterprises. Talk to me about that, brother. Let's get into that building of a company, really taking these. You said the bug companies where you started, and then you've just continued to grow that. Talk to me about why people are successful and maybe why they're not, what you've learned along that path.
I think, and this is going to sound super cliche, but and I do coach young entrepreneurs, not in terms of age, but in terms of experience, entrepreneurs that are just getting started. That's my focus. And a lot of times they think that it's the idea and that really matters. That's going to make, the biggest difference. And it's not. It's because the idea is going to, for the best entrepreneurs, is going to evolve. Look at what happened with Amazon. That was a bookstore, right? And the best companies and the only companies really that survive and thrive are the ones that evolve. So what somebody needs is that mindset where they go into it and they're like, hey, I have an idea and I'm going to pivot, right? I'm going to put my foot in the ground, and there's some certain core values or, some certain things that we're going to build this company around. But the thing that I'm not going to do is give up. That's what I'm not going to do. I'm going to get punched in the face. I don't know how and I don't know when, but it's going to happen. And it's never the same for different companies. So there's no book about exactly how it happens. Sometimes it's with partners. Sometimes it's with finances. Sometimes it's with COVID, right? No one could have predicted that. And you just wake up each morning. It's like a relationship. You wake up each morning and you say, hey, man, it's not all rainbows and sunshine, but I'm going to work on it. And then you do the same day after day, and some days are hard. And that is what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur.
I mean, there's gold right there, you guys, knowing that, okay, I have a good idea, but it's probably not the right thing guaranteed a year from now, 5 years, 10 years from now. Yeah. One of the things you talk about, and one of the things I think you do a great job of, is goal setting. We're in the beginning of the year. Hopefully everybody's already done their goals, but they're fluid and they do change. Exactly. And you do pivot and evolve. So talk to me about goal setting, your process, and why that's so important to these businesses succeeding.
Yeah. So, and I have goals for my businesses and then also personal goals. And some of them overlap, but in probably November-ish, I start thinking about my goals for the next year. And some people, some really successful people don't necessarily set goals or do like quote unquote New Year's resolutions or anything like that. I do. And it's not because I don't work on something until that point. It just gives me a really good kickstart. So I start working on them in November of, the previous year, and I'll refine them throughout the year. You said they were fluid, and that is exactly right. Things and goals change, right? As we accumulate information. I had a goal to have 100,000 followers on Instagram in 2021. And I was on pace the first month or two. I was going to make it by June. And then I realized that wasn't going to help me achieve my top level goal. It wasn't. I thought that's what I wanted, but it wasn't. And even though I was on pace to do it, I realized I was getting a bunch of followers that didn't really benefit from the content I was putting out there and things like that. And so I pushed pause on that. But you're absolutely right. Goals are fluid. I refer to my goals as visions. And it's not like there's this, spiritual thing for me. Some of my goals are spiritual, but it's not like I'm having these like heavenly messengers come to me. That's not what I mean by vision. By vision, I mean, I envision them. So every morning is part of, my morning routine before I get started with my email. I go through this process where I journal, I do meditation, I do some spiritual reflection and study, and I go through my goals, and I break my goals or visions into 7 different areas. And each day of the week, I pick a new area to spend 5 to 15 minutes imagining myself having achieved whatever goal or vision for that area. For example, I'm writing a book in 2022. So this morning I go through the process of, in my mind, I close my eyes and I'm envisioning what it feels like. What does the book look like? I can see it in my hands and I can flip through the pages, and how many pages are there, and how does it make me feel? And I show it to other people, and how does that make me feel? So what I'm doing is I'm going through this process of creating the reality before it actually exists, right? They say that, everything's created twice. And so that is one of the most powerful things that I've done to help me achieve what I'm after in this kind of pursuit of my goals.
I have a couple questions in there, but I got to get to one of the things. And if you can name the 7 areas, I'm really fascinated, because I have heard people, and I do it myself, I have 7 areas, but specifically breaking it down and working on it for that day, or meditating or praying, or whatever your vision practice is. I have not heard it put that way. So talk to me about those 7 areas, brother, because I think people could get some real benefit. They hear journal, they hear meditate, they hear, some form of exercise, but what you said is unique, or at least I haven't heard it put that way.
Yeah. So, I have 7 areas. I've heard people having 9. There's people that have fewer. So, it may be different for some people, but mine are, and they're in order of priority. Number 1 are my spiritual goals. Number 2, family. Number 3, mental, like what's my mind doing? Number 4, physical. What about my body? Number 5 are my professional goals. Number 6 are my financial goals, and number 7 are my social goals, my network. And those are organized in priority. And I look at my goals and my life as being, they're like spokes on a wheel, right? If you have a couple of really strong ones, they don't take the place of broken ones. You need them all to, and I'm really careful with the word balance. I'm careful with that word because I look at balance over, sometimes it's not day by day, right? Sometimes it's not every single day I spend the same time with my kids that I spend with my work, or sometimes I have to travel and I'm spending all day working and no time with my kids, right? And so I look at balance over a longer period of time than just, the micro. But those are my areas. And I feel like, everything that I'm trying to accomplish in my life can be, fit into one of those areas.
Well, guys, you're hearing literally a serial entrepreneur who's done extremely well say, in order of priority, professional was his 5th one. I find that so fascinating, because that tells me you're taking care of all this other stuff. Make sure you're whole so that you can perform to the best of your ability. My next question would go to, we talked about goals being fluid, but one of the things that maybe is or maybe isn't, I'm curious to get your answer on this, but what is your purpose? And I've heard different people break down their purpose, whether it be their kids. Some people I've heard say they don't do their kids. What is your purpose when you're doing your goals, when you're doing your visions? What is your purpose, brother?
So I actually have a separate, so I have a top level goal or ultimate vision for each one of those categories. Mm-hmm. So it's different. So, so I have a top level spiritual goal, top level goal with my family, and so on. My top level. And another thing you mentioned, that you were surprised that number 5 was that, my professional career was number 5. Another thing that surprises people is that financial was number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Out of 7. It's number 6. And I've been very successful. I've been very blessed financially, and it's my 6th focus. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been so blessed financially, is because if I get everything else in order, that's going to fall into place just naturally. The best businesses are the ones that fill a need, right? They're not created to make money. They're created to fill a need, and then people pay you to do it. But yeah, so I have different purposes professionally. I'm a builder. I love to create. I love the startup process of businesses because I mean, I was put on this planet, at least for professional reasons. I've said quite a few times, for to help companies get off the ground and scale. That's, I don't have to do this. I meet with startup entrepreneurs almost on a daily basis. Had a great pitch yesterday, one hell of an idea of a software company. And I don't have to do it, but I love it. It gives me purpose. And, when I create top level goals that don't really change over my career, right? Those don't really change from year to year. And I have 5 and 10-year goals, and I focus on my long-term goals a little more. Tony Robbins always says, people underestimate what they can do in 5 or 10 years, and they overestimate what they can do in 1. And so I focus on those longer term goals a little more often, but for each of those categories, my top level goals don't change, and I have to make sure that my goals, and I only have a couple annual goals for each category, but I make sure that those are consistent with my top level goals that don't change. Like, hey, I want to have a successful family life where I'm in my kids' life and they can talk to me, and, we have a beneficial relationship, and, we enjoy being around each other and spending time with each other, and we can count on each other, and we can cry with each other. And that doesn't change. That goal doesn't change. It's really tough to measure, but that goal doesn't change. That's my top level family goal, right? So then my goals underneath that, they have to be consistent with achieving that end.
Well, one of the things I'm hearing, especially with the financial, there is, whether you call it law of attraction, you call it faith, you call it expectation, and it's not in a braggart way. You're just very confident in what you're doing, why you're doing it. And so money is going to flow through. I can feel it. I can just, even when we talked the first time and now, talk to me about that thought process, or if you have one, if it's just an expectation that it with hard work and dedication and passion that this will all take care of itself, or if there's something greater at power.
Yeah. I believe in the law of attraction. And it's a lot easier to say that, last year, as I would go through my visions and I would focus, my financial, positive affirmation was something about, I said, money is attracted to me and I obtain it naturally in very large quantities. And I would repeat that over and over and over and over. Now it's easier for somebody that has a couple of bucks to say that, right? What's hard is changing your mind before. And I have huge financial goals that will take me decades to get to, but so it's all relative at the end of the day. But like I said before, you have to create it visually, mentally first before it happens. There's varying levels of poor, right? And I grew up, lower class, right? My dad was a car mechanic. I grew up there were 6 kids, so 8 of us total, in a 2-bedroom house with 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom, about 1,200 square feet. There's some people who grew up with dirt floors. I lived in South America for a couple of years. I got to see a lot of that. So, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. Let's just say that. But at some point in my life, I was probably, a teenager or something. I grew up in a small town, one of those towns that people don't really leave. I went and visited just a couple of weeks ago. I bought a house out there so we could visit, make it a little more comfortable for us. And I went to a local high school basketball game, and man, I knew everybody. It's one of those towns, people don't leave for better or worse, but the thinking is different, right? And when I was able to kind of remove myself from this constricted and limited thinking, I realized, man, I can do anything. And one of those things is that I wanted to be, independently wealthy, and for a lot of different reasons. do I want to be comfortable? Of course. I love cars. I love big houses. But there's so much more to it. There's so much more that I can do with wealth. And so before I started accumulating wealth, I made sure that I believed that I was worthy of it. That's another problem that people have, is they think, for whatever reason, they're not worthy of having money. And that's another reason why you have to visualize it, and you have to make it so that you're not looking at areas where, are distracting you from wealth.
So we hear what you're saying, and I know you coach people on this. My question, or my frustration, is why don't people do what you said in terms of the journaling, the writing down their goals, their visions, having this belief, the law of attraction? Why is it that people choose not? I think we can help people.
Two reasons. It's pretty much like why people don't do other things. It's the same. One, they don't believe it's going to make a difference. Two, they're too damn lazy to do it. Right? It's there's so much that people can do if, one, they believe that it's going to make a difference, and two, they're not too lazy to do it. And look, some days I miss, some days I'm not feeling it and I have to get back on the horse. But I at this point in my life, I never get to the point where I'm like, yeah, does this stuff really work? I'm beyond that. It's something worked at some point, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and until something changes. So for me, there's no question about that. But there is a lot of this frou-frou, like, theoretical that some people have a hard time with. Like, I literally, in going through my visualization techniques, I imagine money growing on trees. And what do we hear our entire lives? What do we hear?
It doesn't
money
grow
doesn't grow on
trees, right?
trees. That is not true, because you can grow a freaking orange, you can sell the orange, and then you have money, right? And so if we change some of that stuff, and I grew up like that. I grew up with my parents always telling me, hey, we can't afford that. I had to buy my own shoes, and, and I had a great life. I wouldn't change it for anything. But, I don't know if you have a video podcast, but for the people that are watching, if you do, like, there's a collection of Jordans behind me that I use kind of, I'm a really big shoe guy, but when I was a kid, Michael Jordan was the thing, and all I wanted was Jordans. And I was lucky enough to get a pair or two throughout my childhood. And now I buy a pair a week. And I kind of use that. I use it as art. I invest a little bit in them, but they don't make me a lot of money. But for me, it's more the visualization, is that there's abundance. And I'm trying to teach my kids this, right? I'm trying to do the opposite of what my parents did. And my parents didn't do it to have a negative effect on me. They didn't have money, right? They just didn't. But you got to get creative with little kids, because they're smart, and I can't just tell them, no, I can't, we can't afford that. Sometimes I wish I could, right? But, because it's the easier answer than, no, we're not doing that right now. It's not what's best for you. But you really got to get to that point where, there's all these limiting beliefs, and you have to discover what they are, what you've heard forever. Like, money doesn't grow on trees. That doesn't do any good, right? It doesn't help anyone.
Well, you're going to have big houses, brother. If you buy a pair of Jordans every single week, you got to have big houses. That's a lot of shoes. But no, it's so true. I'm glad I wanted to ask you about that, because I saw it the first time. It's pretty cool. It's a cool display regardless. One of the things that I'm hearing though is you have a community of you're around people with their ideas, with their you get to mentor these people that have these really fun ideas, and that's got to fire you up. So talk to me about that sense of community and what mentorship, what that looks like for you, and what that can do for these potential entrepreneurs or just people trying to get better in life.
Yeah, I mean, there's clear advantages for me just because I just crave, the startup process, and it's a little different. When I've created a true startup, but it's tough to redo it now because I have a few bucks, and so it's I'll always save a company. It's kind of like I'm trying to relive high school in a way, but I'm in college, right? It's a little disingenuous to some extent, but that's how I do it, is through other people that are currently where I used to be. And and I am an angel investor, so I do invest in some of these companies. I pick and choose what I do, mostly to kind of balance my portfolio and stuff that I'm passionate about. I turn down about 90% of the pitches. But I love it. This is, like I said, this is at least professionally speaking, why I was put on this planet. And I love hashing out ideas with people. And I'm really good at just spotting issues and helping kind of refine the idea. That I'm really good at. I'm a really good financial manager. So I'm good at money, which, is really tough for startups because money is usually, pretty slim in those early days, especially pre-revenue. So I've been able to come in and help people in different ways. So some people need help, scaling their company. They've done it for a couple of years and they really need to take it off, need for it to take off so they can exit or whatever. Some people are having legal issues. Some people are having issues with partners. I have 13 business partners. And, one of my top level goals is to have, in the next 8 years, have 15 of my business partners become millionaires. And I'm on number 4 right now. And that is one of the things I'm most proud about. So when these people come to me, I tell them that goal and I let them know, like, hey, my focus is you. And I try to align interests. I do the same thing with employees, right? If I can create a compensation plan where they're successful when I'm successful, that's mutually beneficial. That's how things are built. So, people, they can go to my website, allandraper.com, and schedule a free, I schedule 15-minute appointments just to see if I can help them or whatever, and see where that takes us. But, because I've been through the process, because I'm an attorney, because I'm an experienced business owner, I've created several startups. I'm involved in several different industries. I own 23 businesses. And, I'm just in a position where I can help in a lot of ways. And sometimes it's just the resources that I have.
Well, guys, absolutely check it out. Whether you're aspiring to open a company, if you want to know about angel investing, if you want, Allan is a wealth of knowledge. Brother, my question is, with 23 companies, with 13 business partners, how exactly do you manage the time? How do you set it up so that you're effective? Because that's a lot of balls in the air, man. And I just, even thinking about it, I'm like, okay, I'm really curious to see how he sets his week up so that he can really be effective with all of these various things going on.
It's a work in progress. And I'm kind of at a point where I need, I have a couple of assistants that help schedule stuff, especially with my 2 podcasts. I don't have a lot of things, set commitments. doing podcast recording just because I'm relying on somebody else's time. Those are kind of set in stone. But besides that, I don't have a ton of time commitments. So it's, my schedule is very fluid, and I need help with it. It's something that I'm really focusing on for 2022, is becoming more efficient, something I focus on every year. But my companies don't all need the same. They're not all at the same stage, right? I have companies that have been around for 6+ years and are multi-million dollar companies that are doing net profit in the 40+% range. Those companies are doing all right. I don't need to spend as much time focusing on those as I do. I recently started a digital marketing agency, lizardsem.com, with an awesome partner. And we are so busy. It is out of control. The demand for our services has just gone through the roof. And so that company, even though the top line revenue isn't as high, demands more of my time. I'm also developing a software and integration software for service businesses. And so, there's things that my schedule's in such flux that I guess what I'm best at is just determining what is needed right now. And I do some planning, but I need to be better at it. Although as an entrepreneur, some things do come up. But I think with my scheduling, the best thing I do is I surround myself with people and make sure that expectations are clear and people know exactly what they're accountable for. And people make mistakes, myself included, quite a few. I try to make as many mistakes as possible because that's how I learn. But when you set accountability up, then, it just makes things go more smoothly. And I'm not a micromanager. That's one of the best things I've ever done is, I have businesses in states that I haven't been to for several years. I have a business in Boston, and I used to live in Boston. I haven't been there for a couple of years. Thriving business. And the reason why is because I put people in a position where they know that I trust them and I hold them accountable. And that really helps. So a lot of people, it kind of makes them start to sweat a little bit when I tell them I have 13 business partners and 23 businesses, and the numbers are growing. But they don't know the people that I've surrounded myself with. What's funny is that I sleep much better and I sleep more now than I did year one of my first startup.
Well, and that was my next question is, what do you know now that if you're speaking to those people that are just starting, that you're like, man, if I could have just known this 10 years ago, whatever that year was, I wish I knew that now. This would be a huge feather in my cap to really accelerate business growth. What would be that one thing that you're like, guys, hear this when you're starting your business, when you're in that startup phase, this is probably the most important thing that you need to know?
Man, there's so much, but I would focus on those limiting beliefs. And the other thing I think would be, business isn't about, kind of going back to that, concept of how it's not so dependent on the idea. People want all their ducks in a row to start their business. And so if there's anyone that's listening right now that's looking for a sign to start your business, I'm giving you the sign. This is your sign. Start it. You should have started it a year ago. You probably should have started 5 years ago. What are you going to be telling yourself in 10 years? Right. So I think just go for it. It's super cliche, but the businesses that figure it out, that make it work, are the ones that go for it.
I love that. I absolutely love that, guys. There is never a perfect time. It is just time to go with a good idea, a lot of passion. And then again, you have resources like Allan that you can reach out to that can help assist and guide you along the way. Brother, is there anything I didn't ask you that you're like, man, I got to share this with the audience before we kind of conclude this interview, because I want to make sure that I give you every opportunity to talk to these folks. So anything I missed that you want to tell them?
I think just be careful who you share your aspirations and good news with. I heard Jordan Peterson say this like a week or two ago. I watched a video of his, probably old video, but everyone has their own motivations and their own agendas. So, be careful who, you share good news with, share your goals with, because some of those people might talk you out of them. And the second thing is, be careful who you take advice from. I put this on my LinkedIn yesterday and got a little traction because somebody disagreed with me, but don't take advice from somebody about something that you wouldn't trade places with them in, right? So, if someone's trying to give you financial advice, if you wouldn't trade, and I wouldn't trade positions with anybody in the world, right? Just I'm grateful for what I have. I'm thankful for who I am and my challenges and my struggles and my journey. But for that one thing, if someone's trying to give me financial advice, before I consider it, I'm going to think, would I financially trade places with this individual? Or I guess another way of putting it is this individual financially in a place where I want to be? So for those that are thinking about starting businesses, don't you dare listen to people that haven't started a successful business. And notice I said successful business. Don't listen to people that started a business and failed, because they don't know. They don't have what you want, and they don't know what it's like to have a successful business. They probably have some good information, like, hey, here's what you don't want to do. But here's the trouble with that. I heard the story of this whitewater raft guide, and he was on this river for years, some river in Colorado. And I'm going to butcher this story, but we're going to get the essence of it here. He was a guide on this river for decades, right? The first 10 years, he's like, he would tell his group, okay, this is a very dangerous area. It's right there over on the side. Don't paddle over there. And sure enough, every single time they would look right at it and they'd paddle right to it. And, he was talking to another guide one day, and they were talking about this, came up somehow. And the other guide was like, wait, why do you tell them about that? And why do you tell them to not paddle there? And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? Because I don't want them to paddle there. You direct their attention to the other side of the river, and you have them paddle towards that direction. And he says something like, whatever they focus on, that's where they're going to head. And so, it's nice to look for some pitfalls, but what you really want to do is focus on, and this kind of goes back to the visualization. I don't visualize me avoiding, whatever I'm trying to avoid in my life with my goals. I focus on the things I want to achieve. And so when you're looking for advice, especially in the startup phase, just don't listen to them. And I'm not saying be rude to people like, hey, I'm not listening to you, you're kind of a loser, right? That's not my point. My point is you just kind of nod your head. Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. And then you completely forget what they just told you. And this is especially true of family, especially true of parents,
Sage advice, man. They're sitting there trying to protect you, quote unquote, when the reality is this is your journey. If you believe it, you just go get it. I love that advice. Brother, I know you gave it to him earlier, but one more time, if people wanted to connect with you online, where's the best place to find you and really learn more about what you're doing and how they can learn from you? Yeah,
I appreciate it, JM. AllanDraper.com. That's ALLAN Draper.com. I'm active on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn. Really easy to get a hold of. So reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I don't really have fee structures. I don't charge for, any of my services. I was going to, but I realized it wouldn't really be worth my time. And I enjoy it too much. And, I am looking for companies to invest in. That's kind of where I monetize it. But I treat all companies the same, whether I'm going to invest in them or not. Let me know how I can help. It's something I'm passionate about, and I just happen to be pretty darn good at it too.
Well, you're damn good at that. You're good at the podcast, brother. I appreciate you being on today. You guys check him out. And yeah, man, just such a good time. Great conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, JM. Privilege, man. You run a good show here, and I appreciate all you're doing to, add this great information to the industry.
I appreciate you, man. You guys, obviously, if you want more on business, this is a great resource. Share it with the people you know and love. Be that beacon of light for someone else and say, hey, I heard this guy, Allan, he's awesome. Share it out with your friends. Remember, your mindset does matter, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a great one. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.